This is the Investor Connect podcast program. I'm Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of this show in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, family offices, private equity, and many other investors for early stage and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today I'm here with Stephen Rice of Upskill Enterprise. Stephen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So what was your background before joining Upskill Enterprise? What did you do before this?
So before this, I worked for Sector Skills Council in the United Kingdom, which is kind of the conduit between industry and the government on skills-related issues.
Great. And so what led you to start work in this space? What attracted you to it?
So whenever I was working with the Sector Skills Council, my responsibility was business development across the whole of the United Kingdom and into Europe. And one of the big things that I was saying, Hall, was that we were listening to our bigger companies whenever it came to what their skills needs were, and we were avoiding listening to our smaller and medium-sized companies. Now, when you come from, if you're looking at history, at the traditional industries that existed within communities, we knew that there were staple businesses that people would come out of education and go into. Now, that's not the case now because we've got the gig economy, we've got advancements in entrepreneurship. We don't have the same surety over what education needs to produce for our industry. And that has massive ramifications. And if we're only asking our bigger companies what their skills needs are, we are neglecting 80% of our population of small and medium-sized companies who absolutely need the right skills and the right talents. So with that, and also a view that we were witnessing a lot of people being left out. A lot of people are being marginalized whenever it comes to access to the labor market. That really spurred me on to create Upskill Enterprise because I wanted to develop something which completely flipped this around, changed the rhetoric and the message that was out there that actually we do need to listen to our small and medium-sized companies. We need to come up with something creative which empowers and includes everybody. And that's what drove me to start Upskill Enterprise.
So great. So what's your advice for people investing in this space? What do you tell investors they should be looking for?
So within this space, what we would say that is fundamentally important is that normally technology companies or HR tech or ed tech are focused on pushing education or products towards business all the time. And we're doing that in a process that is avoiding the elephant in the room, which is, first of all, understanding the needs of the company and needs of our community. So in this space, what we're looking at is more around the ecosystem of the community that surrounds the challenge. So where companies may be struggling to find the right talent, or where they're dealing with issues now with COVID of recovery and things like that, that actually the solutions that are built around the community and workforce needs are the ones that are vitally important. And that's very much where we're targeting and we're focusing, is on that ecosystem of support for companies and the community.
Great. So how do you see the industry evolving? In what direction do you see it going?
So in 2020, obviously, coming into this year, there were seismic shifts in the trends around HR tech and people tech and ed tech. And some of the main trends that we're seeing are open workforce models, on-demand talent networks, and response to the gig economy. Now, this all comes back to things like the rise of automation within the workforce. We've all heard things like Industry 4.0 and the future of work. But what does that actually mean for companies and businesses? And the biggest trends within the sector currently are looking at ways in which we can dynamically match talent to where there is a need and doing it quickly and in a cost-effective way. So those are the big trends that we're really seeing. And now, obviously, with the impacts of COVID, we're seeing more and more issues around how do we help companies get back to full productivity as quick as they can. We're looking at how can we provide a solution which minimizes the amount of impact that has on our professionals that are out in work at the minute. We got to think about this, Hall, in the way that everybody's super busy. it's about survival at the minute for a lot of companies. And, they don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time and on top of that, a lot of money on something which isn't going to give them a valuable return. And we're also seeing that, there are a lot of things coming employers' way. For example, a hot topic at the minute is around reskilling and repurposing employees and moving them from where they are to where they need to be. But that causes a lot of confusion for employers because they see a lot of free training or opportunities for upskilling, but it might not necessarily be a good fit. And how do they start to really unpick that and understand how it works for them? And the final thing I would say around that is navigating the talent space at the minute. With the US recording, over 43 million people unemployed across the COVID period, there's a lot of really good talent that is sitting there looking to get back into the workforce. Where we had a problem before that employers were struggling to find the right talent, that issue hasn't gone away. What we now have is employers struggling to find the right talent and thousands of CVs or resumes to sift through in order to find somebody who can come in and do the job that's required. So those are the biggest kind of trends and areas that we see a lot of technology growth around supporting companies.
Great. And so what's the growth rate of this sector? How fast is it expanding?
Exponentially. Before 2020, I think there was a report I was reading that there was between 2014 and 2019, there was like a 14% rise on HR tech businesses. But that has exploded. And it's exploded with the need for putting in place social distancing for acquiring new talent, looking at innovative ways of using technology for interviews, for controlling and supporting workers in shifts and things like that. So this space is a sexy space. I know that sounds a bit strange, but HR tech and all things to do with skills at this point in time are very much the fintech of a couple of years ago, or it's experiencing a dramatic boom.
Great. And so how many companies are engaged in this space?
So on account, it's hard to tell at the minute because we're seeing lots of new companies that are evolving and are being kind of growing within this space. But there are certainly within our work in the area that we're working on, we know of 3 companies who are doing similar work. They're focusing mostly on the bigger company side of things, so working with multinationals. But again, this is feeding the issues that exist within the system that we're only listening and working with our bigger companies. You have the management consultancies who are doing physical consultancy with companies to look at skills audits. The problem is with that, the companies can't afford the costs that are associated with management consultancy. And also they don't have the time to engage at that level with some of the offerings that they have. For the bigger companies, it's easier. They have a department who looks after that. They have talent acquisition managers. They have talent development managers. For smaller companies, they don't. So whenever it comes to the end-to-end work that we're doing currently with small and medium-sized businesses, our competition is very small, which is good and bad. It's good because we're dominating the space and we've got a lot of really good partners. But it's also difficult then because competition pushes you on and gives you a challenge. So we're very much trailblazers in this space.
And so how does Upskill Enterprise fit into this overall landscape? What exactly do you guys do and how do you fit into it?
So within this landscape, what we have is, if you think about the different kind of sectors, if you like, you have your human resource tech, which looks after things like performance development, review plans. You've got your work days, you've got payroll software that kind of fits in that slightly as well. And then you've got your education tech, which is your learning management systems and things like that. Now, what we have seen is that those 2 areas, those 2 sectors normally sit very separate. And actually, they should be forced together in terms of anything that you do with education technology should feed into your human resource technology and should be complementary because your people are your most important asset. As you develop them, they're going to stay. They're going to feel enthusiastic about your company. Therefore, other things like absenteeism or drops in performance will be significantly enhanced when you invest in your people. So where we sit is kind of on top of the both of those as the glue that fixes them both together. And we would classify ourselves as more people tech. So we are the solution that maps your talent flow to your cash flow, which looks at how you can get the best out of your people, understand the hidden talents that they have, and in turn, improve your productivity and see some systematic impacts on how your business performs. So that's where we sit within the sectors. And that's why we see ourselves as a very different proposition for investors.
Great. Well, recently COVID-19 came through and put many economies into lockdown and changed the sectors in many different ways. And in each sector, some parts are accelerated and some are decelerated. In your space, what did you see being accelerated? And then what did you see being deaccelerated by COVID and its effects?
Yeah, so obviously we're seeing a rise in things like home working and also a lot of unemployment. So in our sector, what we've seen is a rise in opportunities for upskilling for people who may be out of work or unable to work as a result of COVID, to look at how they can reskill themselves to get back into work. We've also seen a rise in technology, which looks at how there is a link between those who are seeking employment and employment opportunities. So the development of resumes and that sort of thing. But what I've really noticed is that employers are in real need of support for recovery. So understanding how they can get their people to, or their staff back in to help their company to grow. There's an analogy that I would use that in a crisis, if you look at a movie from Hollywood, they would normally depict that as people running away from a crisis with their hands in the air, screaming and shouting for help. But actually, the reality is different and human nature is different. People run towards a catastrophe in order to help. And, that's no different in this situation. And there are people whose livelihoods depend on their job and they want to see their company doing well. And they are running to their employer and they're saying, look, I have skill and I have talent. I want to help you. And what we try to do is articulate those skills to employers to say, look, this is how your employee can help you get to where you want to be. So we're seeing a rise in those support mechanisms for recovery, a huge amount of training opportunities and upskilling opportunities, which may or may not be relevant, but are also confusing for employers. And then also initiatives to support job seekers and people who are out of work to get back into work. That's the kind of main areas that we're seeing a huge growth in.
And so what new applications are you seeing coming out of the COVID-19? Are there any new techniques or technologies or use cases that are interesting?
Yeah, we're working with a number of different partners at the minute. Down in Mississippi, we just submitted a grant to the Department of Labor today in partnership with the National Association of Workforce Boards and the US Chamber of Commerce. And it's looking at how we can really support those communities who need community action and support together to get people back into work. And some of the other partners that we're working with have come up with some great solutions. For example, remote interview techniques over video calls and video conferencing or over voice calls, and the use of AI in helping employers to work out who is a suitable fit for a job when you can't pick up visual cues from body language and things like that. So there's some really neat technology that's coming around AI to support some of the functions that you would normally see within a workforce situation, but that can't happen because of social distancing. Also with employers, we're seeing some really good technology to support working from home. So obviously, we all know about Zoom and technologies like that, but we're seeing some very genius technologies coming through which help with work scheduling and work planning, and also for the evolution of some technologies which were in their infancy and weren't possibly a huge requirement for employers before COVID, which are now fundamental to the working. So you've got things like Slack, which have seen massive integrations, Monday as well, which have added new features to help with agile sprint planning for developers who are remote. So those are the kinds of things that we're seeing from our partnership working across the United States.
And how did COVID change the investment thesis for this space? What are investors looking for now that they weren't a few months ago? How did it change?
I think the big thing is now understanding when a business can be successful within this environment is a great determining factor on whether or not it can be successful in good times. And certainly the way that we have operated with Talent Census is that it has been built for the good times and was really tested and proved successful in a situation of peril. The one thing that I would say is for investors not to back conventional solutions and conventional ideas around education technology and HR software, because conventional isn't working and it won't work. We need to be thinking differently about solutions of how we can help employers. It's not a simple case of developing a technology which we try and sell on a one-to-one basis with employers. There needs to be an ecosystem of support around that solution with workforce agencies, with educational providers, with those agencies who have the ability to have influence and support within the community of businesses. Also with that, it's how technology integrates with existing softwares and the importance of that integration. Coming in with something new to replace another system is only going to work really well if you have the time to engage with the employer. Employers don't have that time. So what we need to do is look at how we can integrate and have APIs to link into things that already exist and try not to take over, because in that instance, you're not going to get a sale. On top of that, having the technology ready, the importance of right now having something that's ready to go and has been tested and has been demoed, and ensuring that the right team is behind the software or the solution or the product. At Upskill, what we have had pride in is the fact that our team from the start has been bolstered with some of the most important people in workforce. So we've engaged at an early stage. Our chair is the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the US Department of Labor. Our partnerships, we have included some of the biggest federal agencies, including the National Association of Workforce Boards and the US Chamber of Commerce, which I mentioned. And having that team around us has really helped us to ensure that we are heard and we are listened to, and we're not just another technology provider trying to come up with a solution for what is a very, very sincere and difficult problem.
Great. So based on the COVID situation, how does the startup COVID-proof their business in this sector? What do they have to do to continue working through lockdowns and quarantines?
I think understanding your customers first and foremost and listening to what their needs are, that's always the case with any business or any startup who is coming up with an idea. But being able to be really empathetic to the needs of and the situation of your customers. One of the big things that we did at the start was to really inside and out learn the Kubler-Ross curve of grief stages, if you like, of what the emotional response of our customers is at any given time to the COVID situation. So we're thinking about selling to people. And when you're selling to people, you have to understand where they're at. And they're at protecting their livelihoods at the minute. They're all about making sure that their business is being successful. Being open and able to have conversations with people on Zoom, being able to demo, having all of your toolkits ready, accessible in a way which isn't going to bore them to death. We thought about starting webinars, and we were going to do some webinars into what it was that we were doing in Talent Census. And then I went on to LinkedIn and I was looking through my LinkedIn. We were getting ready for the webinars and I realized that everybody's doing webinars. And, it's like, when you think about that and you think about selling, these things are quite draining. When you're speaking with people on Zoom, you're giving a lot more attention than what you would do in a casual meeting, because you're intently listening, you're trying to keep up with the technology, you're making sure nothing fails, you're conscious that you're on video, so being able to, diversify your message in a number of different areas, looking at podcasts as you do. You're looking at your email mailers, you're looking at your associated channel partners that you may have, and making yourself visible through multiple channels and not relying on one. The final thing I would say about that is technology is key. With Talent Census, what we've developed is a tool which can be used remotely. We're looking at a workforce system which normally relied on people, consultancy, going in to speak with customers, going in and meeting with employers, meeting with job seekers. That can't happen, or if it is happening, it's happening at a much reduced rate because of social distancing. So technology plays a key role, and developing something which can be used remotely, can be serviced remotely, and is in the cloud is vitally important for everybody right now.
Well, great. Well, in the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
So the final thing I would say as well in this space, and one thing which is very important to us, is the equity and fairness that exists within the labour market. And one of the big things, obviously with the rise in acknowledgement for issues surrounding discrimination at this point in time, we've been looking at how we can not only make our software and our startup COVID proof, but is also how we can make sure that what we're developing is going to have an active difference to our society when it comes to unconscious bias. And this is an area which is quite close to my heart, in the sense that I want to make sure that everybody gets a fair and equal opportunity to engage with education and engage with the workforce. And, from my early career days, I used to work in a community whereby the people I was working with were, they had valuable skills and valuable talents, but because of where they were from or because of their name, they didn't get the opportunities that others would have. So some of the things that we've done within Talent Census is to break down those barriers and ensure that there is no unconscious bias which enters into the recruitment process. So as part of our system, we completely anonymize our job seekers to our employers, and the only thing that we show is their skills up until the point of interview. That's something that I think not only at this point in time are businesses needing to think about how their startup can be COVID proof or COVID friendly, but also how they make sure that they are making a difference to civil society and pushing us forward and removing things like race discrimination, age, gender bias, all of those things which cause substantial hardship within our community and also prevent our businesses and our people, our community, from prospering. So that's the other thing that I would say is very important at the minute in this space.
Well, that's great. Sound like a great company, and you're in a great spot. So how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can check out our website, upskillenterprise.com. You can also check out Talent Census at talentcensus.com. Feel free to send me an email personally. You can reach me at Stephen, Stephen, at upskillenterprise.com.
Great. We'll put those in the show notes. I want to thank you for joining us today and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
That's great. Thanks very much, Hall.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Hall Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for the basis of investment decisions.